Okay, so I wanted to do a series on a preamp I made. This is just to share with people and also to get some feedback about what your thoughts are on how to make guitar preamps and design considerations. Seems like there's just a lot to learn when I figure things out or I learn something, especially if it's kind of hard to find on the internet or if it's hard to explain or extend. It's just nice to share with people. Helps to get feedback about things also. I basically, in my spare time, I kind of made a guitar preamp. I wanted to just share that. Okay, here's a menu. This is sort of how I expect this series to go. Basically, we're on the background video. In this series, we're going to talk about all the different things I talked about and learned when I made a preamp. These are the things I think need to be in a preamp. I think I need at least 2 channels. I mean, single channel amps are fine, but I like to have channel switching. You have more it's more versatile. I usually like to have a distorted channel. Of course, a clean channel is necessary. I originally didn't build this with any compression, but I really couldn't get a good modern sound without the compression. Of course, you need tone controls. I think you need mids. Not all preamps have mids, but I think they're needed. Buffering's part of just doing the circuitry, so I have a little video on that, and there's a lot of neat stuff actually with buffering. Channel switching, that's something to talk about because you have the distorted and clean channel, but you know, you want to figure out how you make that work, especially with the foot switch and effect center return. Those are also they're not totally necessary. You can just use the master route, but I think it's usually better to use effect center return because you have a little better lower signal. Reverb is something that I'm not really getting into. This is supposed to be a preamp with, you know, easy parts that are easy to find and most people have, and reverb tanks and digital things like that. It's not really what I'm trying to do here, but I think it'd be fine to put one on the effects loop. And if I get interested someday on how to make an easy one, I might get into that. But this is just a general preview of my preamp. Here's the whole schematic. Basically, there's no power hooked up to the different sections, just because I didn't want to clutter it, but each section does need power. There's a buffer right there, gives you a high impedance signal. You've got channel switching to either go down through the distorted path or through the clean loop path. We've got tone controls with bass, mid, and treble. There's another buffer after that, and then you've got sort of an amplification stage. There's some subtleties we'll talk about. There's no right or wrong way to do some of these things. I didn't really preamplify the signal. I just sort of did the filtering, and there's kind of some signal loss along the way, and there's makeup gain at the end. It can be done different ways. I think like this circuit seemed like the most natural way to do something. If you look right here, this is right before the amplification. You can actually get a decent signal out of that. There's a speaker simulator I might talk about a little bit. Some other things I did with the circuit that aren't necessarily on there. They're visible. There's power supply section. There's, yeah, that's not a compressor. That needs clipped. That's wrong. There's a little channel switching circuit there. We'll talk about that later. There's a relay and so forth. This is a general overview. Kind of got started on this project when I was on a plane trip. I was going to visit my daughter, and I thought, well, what would I do if I wanted to build a guitar preamp? And so I just started studying different sections and how people did things, read a lot of schematics. I'm certainly not an expert on how to build preamps, but I've studied enough to build one, and I think it does sound okay. I'll leave a link to some sounds made with this in case you want to hear what it sounds like. Overall, I kind of concentrated on the distorted part in tone stacks first, and I felt like the distorted section sounded pretty good. The clean section needed a little more. It was a little too snappy for me. I felt like you could really get a better sounds with using a compressor or maybe some soft clipping or something like that. So I spent a lot of time on compressors. I made an opto compressor, a solid state compressor. This is actually a diode compressor, which is an awfully cool circuit. It's hard to model, but I think I've got a decent diode compressor. They're really exceptionally cool. It's mainly passive, actually. It's very neat, but we'll talk about that. It kind of does it for this first video, and we'll talk about the distorted channel. This is kind of a trial and error and some intuition, and there's a sort of process I went through to arrive at the distortion.